Welcome everyone, and thank you for choosing this session. I know it's like a pretty crowded, conference, and you have a lot of other options, like 4 more tracks. But thank you for attending this talk. I hope I can add some knowledge to your knowledge, and at the end, you become satisfied. So today, I'm going to talk about architectural thinking, and particularly on Flutter state management, which is a very controversial topic in Flutter world. And at the end, either I'm killed or I'm like a hero, so I don't know. We'll figure out at the end of the talk. But I was actually a Flutter developer for a couple of years, maybe 4 years, like since beta. And well, as a Flutter developer, usually when you come to a project, you have your roadmap, stuff like that, right? And you want to start, and then the first thing, after doing a few pages, either widgets, then the first thing that you will encounter is, okay, what should I choose for state management, right? And then you go and search, and wow, we have so many options. It's hard to choose. Well, as a developer, sometimes you just quickly decide and say, okay, I'm going to go with block because Google mentioned that in Google I/O, or maybe I go with provider and change notifier because, again, Google is recommending that. But is that a good approach or not? We'll figure out today. What we're going to learn today is I'm going to talk about architectural thinking, like how architects work these days. For the last year, maybe, I've been working as solution architect in one of the biggest company in Nordic called Telia. So I've done a lot of these things that I'm going to share today on different topics. So that's the thing I'm going to share with you as well. Then we're going to review some state management packages and how I approach them as an architect. And we talked about architecture characteristic, what they are, how usually architects choose their characteristic, and how you should do that. And at the end, based on those, how you can make a decision, which one is better for your application, right? Before I start, my name is Majid. I am Google Developer Expert for Flutter and Dart, and a Flutter community leader. And I am also organizer of Flutter Vikings. You see in my t-shirt, and Flutter Vikings is going to happen February 2nd and 3rd in person and virtual next year. I mean 2020, so 2022, sorry. It was past 2020. All right. So, let's get started. Most of the concept that I'm sharing with you, you can also find it on this book, Fundamentals of Software Architecture. It's a pretty good book. If you are not working as an architect or you have not been doing some type of architecture, software architecture, I strongly recommend reading this book. In the book, there are 3 main concepts that is constantly being discussed. The first one is about trade-off. In the world of architects, everything is has trade-off. If you don't find the trade-off for that, that means you don't find it. There is a trade-off. And that's why architects are usually people that are so boring, because whenever you ask a question, they answer like, it depends, right? And because they know the trade-offs in their head, always they're thinking, oh, should I choose that or this? I don't know, let's figure out, I need to analyze. It's all about analyzing, understanding, and finding the problems and solution trade-off in the head of architect. So they do this constantly on different topics. There is another thing that is mentioned in the book, It's business drive, which I also added like team drive because it makes sense for developers to look at it this perspective, is that it's very important to understand what your business needs. At the end of the day, we developers are like doing some kind of product or service for the business, right? We're just not going to build something randomly. So it's very important to understand and talk to them in their language. This is also very important. And that will affect your decision, even in choosing in state management in Flutter. We'll get to that, like how. And talking about the breadth of the knowledge, which I will shortly talk about it after a few slides. But let me give you a real example. I'm not sure if you know, but we have so many different airplanes or aircrafts in terms of attaching the engine to the wing. We have some airplanes that maybe very commonly you see that they have the engine like below the wing. We have some that is on top of the wing and some that is embedded to the wing. And there are actually even more. So I just had these three to compare. But the question right now is, I'm going to ask you a question. Which one do you think is better? Here you go. Actually, it really depends. Okay, let's have a look at that. Maybe it doesn't depend. Let's have a look. I have three factors right now. Safety. Well, in fact, I made a research quickly, and I found out that if the engine is below the wing, it seems like the most safest option. Why? Because it's a little bit far from the cabin and the tank, like the fuel tank. So if, just in case, anything happened to the engine, it is less dangerous, let's say. And in terms of the strength of the structure, if architect put this engine below the wings, there are a couple of good things that they can do. For example, they can have bigger engine or larger engine, and also they can add more engine, maybe 6, 8, or whatever, depends on the aircraft. And in terms of maintenance, because these engines are very close to the ground, it's much easier to maintain because they can just go and reach to the engine easily. There is no equipment needed, right? Obviously, that is the best solution, right? Having the engine below the wings. Or is it? Well, let's have a look at that. It turns out that if you have these engines below the wings, in terms of aerodynamic, it seems like it's quite costly because the way that it just breaks the air and things like that, it just doesn't work as the rest. Therefore, you consume more fuels, and that is more costly. And also, there is a problem with that. The problem is that when it's closer to the ground, the engine will absorb more dust. Therefore, the time of, let's say, lifespan of the engine is shorter. Whereas where the engine is on top, it's much better. Also, when the engine is on top, it seems, because of the exhaust, it has less noise in the cabin. Right, so now I have a question. Which one is better?
The second one.
Well, any other answer? It actually really depends what you want to do. As I said, architects are boring people like me. They always say it depends whatever you ask. So the answer is it depends. It really depends what you want to do. If safety and maintenance is a factor that is more important for the company, so definitely they need to put the engine below the wings. But if that's not the case, or maybe cost of the fuel is more important, then they will do on top of the wings. There's also one more thing that I want to mention here is that, so usually there is like this diagram that you see. Usually we have a very little space on top of the diagram that it says we know stuff that we already know, right? And then the architects are those people that are reading and knowing more. So they add like more knowledge to their skills. And that is the part that we know we don't know, but at least we've heard about it, right? Bear with me, I'm gonna give an example shortly. What does it mean? That is technical breadth. So what I want to encourage you is that before you make a rational decision, you need to know what you don't know, right? Have this broad knowledge before making any decision, because that might come quite handy at some point. And then, well, a large amount of, space that you don't know for sure. Let me give you an example. Who knows about triple patterns or segmented state pattern in Flutter? See? You don't know. That's what I mean. Before you make a decision, maybe you should read more about it. Maybe you should sign up yourself to some newsletter or, stuff related to this state management or Flutter, whatever, to get more knowledge about, the topic that you want to make decision on. In fact, this is mentioned in this page. Quite easy. I mean, you could just open Flutter state management options in Flutter docs and you will see that. Doesn't matter what it is. I wanted to tell you is that you need to research a bit and add more knowledge before you make a decision, because this might be your solution. All right. Let's talk about the state management in Flutter right now. First of all, why this is so controversial topic? Any idea from audience? There is, to my opinion, after 4 years developing with Flutter, I would say that there is no right and wrong answer. There is no good and worse package. There is no better way or worse way, right? And that is the reason it's very controversial. Because everyone sees from their perspective and they say, oh, this is better than that, So let me give you a real example. I made this application, the MJ Coffee app. I actually used it for all of my tutorial, articles, everywhere. What I wanted to do was, I wanted to decide on which state management approach I should use in this application. Even though I had very good knowledge about different packages, I just didn't want to, as an architect, decide rationally. I say, oh, I want to go with Riverpod, for example. I said, no, okay, let's have an architectural thinking on that and then decide. And let's see what I ended up. You will be surprised. One question before I get into the problem and solution. I could have two options. There might be more options, but two particular options right now. I could have handling my state for each screen. Well, because my application was quite small, I had several screens, few widgets, So I could have done it this way, or this way. Maybe a single giant state class or object, and then I use it in all of my screens. Which one do you think is better? Well, clearly, The second one is better because it's easier. It's accessible, isn't it? Or is it? It depends. It actually really depends what you want to do. Let's have a look at that. So I have my state. So let's quickly check this flowchart. So who needs this state? It's a widget, or all widgets, or most of widgets, or some widgets. So clearly, if it's only one widget, it's an ephemeral state, right? So I can handle it differently from where we have app state, which most of the widget needs, right? That's a bit different. Okay, that's something coming here. So I need to think about it right now. I clearly have app state and ephemeral state. So let's see what I can do for that. If you look at the Flutter documentation, you see that it's a lot of approaches. And that's the part makes especially newcomers to Flutter very confused. But, well, quickly after a research, what you can do, you can actually go through a few factors. That's what I did. This is a chart by a friend of us from the community, Mike. And he make these type of chart for different approaches in Flutter. And one of them is Flutter state management packages. That is a comparison. It's a very nice comparison in from pop.dev, right? I had several criteria, but before that, when I looked these packages, let's say the top 31, I quickly could make like a category of each these state management, or like, let's say, categorize them. What I mean is that when I looked these packages quickly, I realized that mostly I can have three categories. One is like those packages that are mostly like a wrapper around the Flutter SDK features, like inherited widget, inherited model, set state, and stuff like that. Sorry. And then I had reactive programming approach, packages such as Mobex, Block, and Qubit, and stuff like that. And then I had functional programming approaches, or based approaches for packages, such as Redux, for example, which they imply pure function immutability and things like that, right? Good. So, but if you look at this chart, it's quite a lot. It's impossible to compare all of them for a simple application. I need to somehow make a shortened list for comparing these packages. So then I add a bunch of criteria so that quickly I could narrow down this list to maybe 5 or 6. For the application, and this is the part that is different from team to team, application to application. That's the part we are saying it depends. For the team that I worked, or in this particular application, I wanted to have a package that is widely used, like it has more GitHub stars or maybe an active repository, like maintainers are actively contributing to the package. And I also wanted to have packages that are, they have code coverage above 70%. This is my red line when it comes to testing, at least 70%. If a package doesn't have that, to me, it's not good enough for at least this package, this application. Good documentation. These are the things that you can quickly just have a look at the websites and repository. You can quickly understand. You don't need to even know the package. Based on your knowledge, you can quickly realize which one is following these principles or criteria, right? I also wanted to have packages that they only do state management. I personally don't want to have packages that they do a lot of things. And also, it was a big plus if the package has a dependency injection approach or solution built in. So I don't need to have another package. So based on that, I came up with a couple of packages, which I get into it. But before that, what I want to show you here is that what an architect, like how an architect look at these problems and add like the ellipses to compare these packages. Because, you know, architect loves ellipses, the words that are ending with ellipses, like maintainability, scalability, and blah, 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 blah. So they love these words. So, okay, I wanted to actually have these words as well. It's a buzzword, and also it shows I'm an architect, right? So, but these elitist words are nonsense to business, to my product owner, for example. So I somehow need to translate this to their language. And at the same time, I also need to translate it to the dev language, like Flutter concerns. When I'm saying, for example, scalability, what does really mean? It means that maybe we want to have more widgets created with different teams added to this application, right? Or it means that I want to have less boilerplate code because then it is hard for me to maintain and scale up fast. Or when we are talking about agility, is all about, if you're translating to the business language, it's about time to market. How fast you can develop a feature. And if you are looking at the developer's perspective, it means that how easily we can adopt this package or solution and quickly create these features in our application. We have user satisfaction where business understand, but then if we want to translate it to the architecture characteristic, these are the characteristics, so that will fall down to performance maybe, fault tolerance. So but like my user wants to have a good user experience in the app generally. So if app is like having an error, we don't want to just leave it to app to crash, right? We want to show a nice message maybe, you know. When it comes to the dev satisfaction as well, like does this package comes with a very good documentation? Can I find articles and can I find like maybe dev tools for that? Does it help me to debug faster? Or does it come with a very good test kit so that I can quickly test? So these are all the developer happiness, right? It makes you more productive. But again, it's subjective, right, from team to team. These are the criteria that I created for this particular app. It might change from this app to another app. And again, the business language is like time and budget. How efficient is that? The longer it takes you add a feature, the more costlier for the business, right? And at the same time, that means it's more complex for the team to grasp or understand this solution. So then simplicity is very important. So I narrowed down to 7 characteristics. So let's have a look on that. And I also narrowed down to 7 packages, which we want to compare right now for the particular application that I showed you. So the first is the low-level API from Flutter, set a state. It's very underestimated, I believe. So people don't think about it. They quickly go to find out about different packages to manage their state. Whereas sometimes you really need this because, well, why? If you look at the table, you see that when I compared this low-level API, I understood that, oh, it is very simple. Why? Because you don't need to learn anything extra. It comes with Flutter itself. It is, well, makes you very productive, almost, but everything is a trade-off, right? The simplicity has a cost. when your application grow, first of all, the solution is not very scalable, apparently. You have some problem with that. For example, you need to pass down the state, lift it up, you know, the concept of lifting down and lifting up the state. So this makes it a little bit hard to scale your application. It's not very like maintainable, especially you have a large application. It's doable, but it's hard. Or it just slows me down, maybe. In the beginning, it's very fast, but when the app is growing, it's a bit hard to understand what's going on. It's a lot of things that you need to take care. Therefore, these are the things that I added to the table. By the way, you don't need to even write an application to figure out all of this for your application. There is, I think I mentioned in the previous slide. So then you have here, you have a repository that it says, I don't remember where I put it, but I have it in the slide somewhere, which you can go and check all the different state management solutions simply, and then you can look at the code. There is a repository called, I think, state management or Flutter architecture solution. So then you can find, it's by Brian Egan, I think. So you can find all these implementation over there. So you can quickly have a look at the code. Then, based on these criteria, I, as an architect, like decide that the state management is perfect for like maybe prototype application or if you want to do something very quickly. So let's have a look at the next one, provider and change notifier, which makes it as a very good solution for state management, right? And this is something that Google is also recommending, like provider. However, Remy yesterday also mentioned, if you have not been in the talk of Remy, this is somehow not a good approach from his perspective. Therefore, we skip that and we go to the next one, which is recommended by him, and that is Riverpod, right? So the Riverpod, I actually quickly checked out the documentation, the sample codes, and you know what I needed based on that, the features. I realized it's not as simple as I thought. I gave a rate, and well, it makes you very productive because it comes with a lot of features that you will eventually need in the app. However, it's very testable and also very, very scalable, works very well in different applications. The scalability, by the way, it's very, again, all of these are subjective, but the scalability is hard to rate because you don't know. You need to implement and grow with that to understand if this is really scalable or not. But based on the experience and what I see in the code base, personally, I understood that it's very highly scalable. So I can use it for my application like easily from the beginning. So I mentioned here adaptability. Here was like when I'm actually mentioning about how easy it is for my team to understand this solution, to implement this solution in the application. This is also really important. It made me less agile because then the learning curve is a bit steep in the beginning, so it's a new things, lots of feature, you need to learn. And deployability also something that I really wanted to mention is when you want to move around stuff in your application, is it like make your application very tightly coupled or maybe it's loose coupling a bit? Depends on the architecture of your app, also it differs. However, the package itself should come with a good solution that doesn't make your application very coupled to the package. So you can simply move something from somewhere to another where, or make a module or a package out of it simply, which can be attached to your application at some point. Block. It comes from the block as a pattern. I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about Flutter block package by Felix. It comes from the category of reactive programming. If I had like an application that uses streams, observables, and WebSockets, real-time, things, that was a perfect choice, I believe. However, again, it comes with some cost. it's not simple. Actually, it's hard to understand for the beginners, especially if you're coming from like a background from web to Flutter. It's a bit hard to digest what's going on here. Again, giving some rates based on that experience, the sample codes from the repo, from the documentation, and that was the conclusion I added to this slide. The next one was MobX. Again, this is coming from the reactive programming category that I made. I figure out that it's much simpler to understand. It's also less boilerplate codes, but it comes with some features that probably my team doesn't like, and that is code generation. That is, again, subjective to team, right? Some people like code generation. They like this magic behind the scenes. Some people doesn't like it. So I found it like, oh, adaptability might be quite low because it comes with something that my team doesn't like it, perhaps. Or, you know, but it's highly scalable. It's a good approach. It's easy to understand, less code to write. It has a lot of features. It had some glitches in testing when it scaled, but, you know, that was bearable. So some rates here as well, and a conclusion at the end. But again, probably I wouldn't choose it if I don't have streams a lot in my application. It's a good approach for, again, reactive programming in your application. And Redux, that is coming from the functional programming-based category. So it implies like pure function, it's synchronous, and you know, blah, 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 blah. Probably you're familiar with that, or if not, doesn't matter. As I said, as an architect, you really don't need to understand the depths of this solution. You want to just add some rate and characteristic and then decide based on what is important for you and the application itself. We'll get to that right now. But what I understood is that like this was an approach very good for web developer when they come to Flutter, especially from React background. It was very understand to write the code and, you know, but to be honest, React is not, Dart is not very similar to JavaScript. So it might come a little bit hard to write those class, those pure function, returning reducer, and blah, blah, and blah, blah, right? So I gave some rating here again. It was not as simple as we had this approach in React world, let's say. But again, it was simple because, well, that's a concept that many developers are familiar with. And last one, it was Gedit. Gedit is a package to bring you like dependency injection as easy as possible. It's following keep it simple, right? And I noticed that some people use Gedit as a state management. While you can do that, it's not recommended because it's not created for that. But Thomas, the creator of Gedit, has created another package called Gedit Mixin, which is actually bringing the state management solution to Gedit. So together, it makes a perfect, probably a perfect state management. It's simple, very simple, because it removes a lot of barriers of learning. Like you don't need to understand maybe build context, for example, for dependency injection and things like that. And again, some ratings. I evaluate some codes. I realize that. But at the end of the day, these were my narrowed down solution, and I came up with these stars. Now it's the time to decide which one I want to use in my application. You see that I'm not saying that Riverpod is better than Block or the other way around. Or I'm not saying that, oh, you should use Gedit or Riverpod. I'm saying that you need to decide based on the facts or characteristic that you decide to compare these packages. For me, for this application, what it was very important was simplicity and also agility. because I didn't want to spend a couple of days to just realize what this package is doing under the hood, or how can I use the syntax. And I just want to build my application in a day, because that is possible with Flutter, right? You can create an application in a day. I didn't want to spend more time. Agility and simplicity for me was the most important factor. I really didn't care, like, if I have to pass down some state somewhere and, keep, or maybe I didn't care about, like, refactoring. So I ended up, guess which state management based on this you think it's best for my application? Just guess. Set state. I said, like, why I need to learn other packages? So I need to come up with, I need to follow up. I knew these packages for sure, but I need to also learn what is new, what has changed, is there any new, like, major upgrade or not? But I ended up, like, having set state. As simple as this, because I didn't have much state in my application. It was only 3 screens, a loading screen with some state, and a couple of other screens, which is loading data from Firebase. And that's it. Set state was working perfectly for me. But remember, I made this decision because the team was very important for me, the agility was very important for me, and simplicity was very important. However, as project evolves, that's what I'm going to tell you. When you decide on a project, on a package or state management, that doesn't mean you need to stick on that forever. In fact, 4 years ago, in my previous company, I started an IoT project. We started using a scope model. If any one of you has used that, you know that it comes with a lot of notify listener, notify listener, notify listener. And I hate this because it just makes your code less readable, at least for me, right? And my team. Maybe some people like it. Again, that's subjective. So what we did, we just removed that and add block, because in an IoT project, WebSocket is the main connection, because the data is always flowing. It's coming and going, so you don't want to just get the state. You want to have this stream of states always. So having a reactive programming approach and a state management from that category was very important for me at that time, so we chose block. You see that we used something else. As our project grew a little bit, then we decided to change it to something else. The fact here is that when project evolves, you can change. Also, what is important, and I have several talks on this, is the architecture of your application. A lot of people think that state management is Flutter architecture. It's not. State management is only one layer of architecture in your application. If you have like layers, like 3 layers architecture, it might reside into application layer. It separates the concerns for sure. You don't need to have all the states in the presentation. What I want to say here is that if you make this architecture clear, add your state management less to presentation, more to the business layer or application layer in this architecture, it's easy for you to replace it with another state management later. So I think choosing a state management is important, but I think more important is to have a proper layer of architecture in your application. You don't need to have layered from the beginning, but you can evolve your project and add more complex architecture, right? All right. As you saw today, as an architect, you don't think like, oh, I want to go with this package because it has more features, or it has like 6,000 stars and that another one doesn't have. No. You might even narrow down the list with those packages that have only 10 stars, but it works perfectly in your application, because the team understands that very well. It's lightweight for your application. Just go for it. Next time, you don't need to ask me or any expert or anyone who has done Flutter and ask, oh, which package or state management should I use? You know the answer right now, right? Which state management is better? Everyone. It depends. Look at your situation, look at your application, and just compare what is best for you and decide on whatever works for you. That's the best state management, for sure. With that said, thank you very much for listening. I'll be staying here. If you have any question, if you want to actually say, oh, I'm killed, or you want to answer ask some question that I'm not able to answer, please do. I'm not afraid of those. Just tell me something.